Hey, good evening. This is David Knapp with Trout Zone Anglers, and I'm going to tie a little midge for you guys that I like to use quite a bit. This is a microtubing midge. I've been tying and fishing this for a long time, and tie it on a Tiemco 2487. The hook I'm tying on tonight's a 16, just so it shows up a little bit better in the video. I'm using a 2mm bead because of that, but typically I'd be using a 1.5mm tungsten bead. I like silver on the beads, black's good, sometimes copper or gold can be good, so just kind of play around with combinations and color schemes. You can see I've started my thread right here behind the bead. I'm going to tie in my tubing just a few wraps back from the bead and tie it in, and then slide, give it some tension, slide it back so it is just there at the end. You don't want too much extra. And then wind that thread back towards the bead just to lock it in real good. And once you have that tubing secure, I'm going to kind of crank down on this tubing. I'm going to stretch it out really tight. Don't want to be building up a real thick body here. And try to keep it right on top of that hook as much as possible so it keeps the body consistent. I'm going to come back to the bend of the hook and then work my thread back evenly back to the bead, and now we're ready to finish this fly. It's, like I said, super quick. I'm using Microtubing. It's a great product from Hairline. I love Microtubing. I do a lot with it. Like I said, it's a Tiemco 2487 hook and a 1.5 or 2mm bead. Thread, I'm just using some 14-aught Vivus and using brown tonight, but match the color of your thread to your tubing. That's really important. This tubing is opaque, so whatever color you put underneath of it's going to show through. And if you put black thread down and a different color of tubing, then you're going to have a black fly, and that's really frustrating if you didn't want one that's black. So I've got this tubing here, I've got my thread here. What I'm going to do at this stage, you can do this different ways. If you don't have a rotary vise, that is fine, but I'm just going to throw a 1/2 hitch in there to secure that thread, and I'm just going to slide that into my bobbin cradle. And this part here, I don't know if this is going to show up real well in this video or not, but I want you to notice how when I pull on that tubing, it gets skinny looking. It's thicker, skinnier. I'm going to pull on it pretty hard. I want this fly to be as slender as possible, and I'm going to wrap the tubing forward as a body, solid, all the way to that bead, keeping it tight. And going to take my thread, come around behind the tubing to secure it. 1, 2, and then come back around in front of that tubing. We should be able to clip it right there. And this part's pretty important. This fly will catch a lot of fish as long as you really secure everything at this point. So I'm just going to build up just a little head right there. And you'll notice that right now that tubing doesn't really match the color of that thread head. That's okay. We're going to take care of that here in just a minute. Got some fuzz developing. Looks like that thread's getting old. I'm just going to give that 3 1/2 hitches and call it good. And you'll see why here. Get that tag cut as close as you can, although it doesn't really matter. I'm going to use some UV clear fly finish. Another really good one that I use a lot, some Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. You can use that to finish the fly. It doesn't really matter what you want to use. I do it with both. I'm just going to put just a little drop here. And you'll notice that thread just darkens up real nice once I put just a little bit of that UV cure on there. There we go. And now the thread color matches that body tubing color much better. Let's cure that UV. And our fly is done. Like I said, this is a really easy pattern. It's once you get it down, I mean, it takes me 30 seconds to tie, and you can, you know, prep your hooks and beads ahead of time and really crank these out. And they catch a lot of fish. Not the only midge pattern that I fish, of course, but definitely a favorite because of how easy to tie it is, and the fish really like it. If you ever get a chance to fish this pattern, if you have they call them a stomach pump, it's really a throat sampler, and they're not great for fish, so please make sure you know how to use one and don't do it any more than you have to, but take a throat sample on a fish, and if you're fishing midges and they're eating midges, compare what you find in that fish's throat to this pattern, and I think you'll just be amazed. I've laid this out side by side with midge larvae. Black fly larvae also look really similar to this pattern, and the only thing that's really different is that bead, and I think the bead is a trigger on this fly. I think that silver in particular looks like a little air bubble helping that fly get ready to ascend to the surface to hatch. And this fly probably works the best just prior to and during a midge emergence, when those fish are starting to key more on the pupa, but it'll work well if you're needing to fish a midge larva also, and hope it works as well for you as it has for me. Thanks for watching.